Hello everybody, my name is Shortline 614 and let us begin episode 24 of Shortline Space Program by undocking our Nervatug and bringing it back to, well, not Columbia Station, low Kerbal orbit, because today we are launching Mun Express. I almost said Moho Express, a future episode. But if you remember back a long while ago, we did a mission called Mun Express, where we sent out a whole bunch of small landers and rovers and a whole bunch of stuff to Minmus to explore it in preparation for Pathfinder Base. And we're going to do the same with the Mun. So this is our Chesapeake 50 launch vehicle. You can see the top is indeed wobbling a lot, partially due to the sheer amount of payload that's encased in that self-admitted ridiculous-sized fairing. There are 4 landers, there's a relay satellite, there's a scanner satellite, and there is just one rover, but it is a rover that we will be seeing in many future missions, or at least variants of it. Due to the wobbliness, I do kind of get into this weird orbit, but hopefully that's all. That, I do end up correcting that is what I am trying to say. But instead of sending this to Challenger or Columbia Station, I'm actually just going to put this in a parking orbit, and I'm going to bring the fuel tug back. I'm going to have them dock, and then that's going to go out to the Mun. So just coasting up into orbit, finally deploying the fairing so you can see the varied assortment of spacecraft and the bizarre apparatus I've constructed to host them all. But you see that's our big rover at the top. You have a scanning satellite, relay satellite. A lot of these are left over from were originally Minmus Express stuff from Minmus Express. On Minmus Express, I think there were. Was there a relay at Minmus Express? It's been so long, I honestly forgot. I know the rovers are smaller. We have one big rover, but on Minmus Express we had 2 small rovers, which really didn't work. But hopefully this rover will work. But we eventually go ahead and we rendezvous with the craft, and I accidentally set myself on a trajectory to directly intercept the craft. So I had to very quickly time warp, unless I didn't want a massive explosion and the entire mission to basically be screwed over. So that's a pro tip. If you're ever coming too fast near a station, just time warp, because in time warp, vessels aren't actually loaded into the game, and they just phase through each other. So there's our Nervatug. I position the Nervatug, and I begin in the payload, and I begin docking. That Chesapeake upper stage is probably just going to go to Columbia Station to I guess, deliver its whatever fuel it has left over. Because I did do a tanker run, and it didn't bring as much fuel back as I wanted. Although, to be fair, part of that was because of how I brought it back from Minmus, but that's a whole other story. So, docking the Nervatug to the payload itself. There we go, I think. I had a bit of trouble, because I always have a bit of trouble docking this turkey-shaped vehicle. It does kind of look like a turkey. And anyways, we begin our translunar injection. I think everything here is at about 4 times speed for this episode. This is a bit of a shorter episode, but it is packed full of stuff. And a standard translunar injection, we're going to be coming in not exactly equatorially over the Mun, however, close enough. We do have some stuff out at the Mun already that we've put out there before, but nothing major. This is the first major part of the Mun, the stuff that we're sending out to the Mun. And I easily get into our orbit. I actually go down, put my periapsis, my Mun periapsis, slightly below where my maneuver node was. And I go ahead and I take our rover and its little I don't want to say kick stage, kind of landing stage, I guess. And I go ahead and I separate it out, because this has enough fuel to circularize and land, and the Nervatug. I've been very fuel conscious with this Nervatug on this mission. So I went ahead and I separated that. Here's the rover. The rover has engines that it can land itself, but for now, we're just gonna put it into a parking orbit. Um, we're not gonna land it. We're gonna land some of the other stuff right away. So very simple. We just uh, turn on that engine, and we get ourselves in a nice parking orbit for now. And we switch back to the Nervatug, and we did unfortunately pass our periapsis, but I do put it into this highly elliptical orbit, because the first thing that we are going to deliver is, well, the vast majority of the spacecraft, actually all of the remaining spacecraft on this, except for two of the small landers, are going to be going, they need to be put into a polar orbit, actually. The relay satellite, the scanning satellite, and two of the landers are going to be landing at the poles, one at the North Pole, one at the South Pole. And then the other two are going to be landing at various spots, along interesting spots. So yeah, I warp to my ascending node, and I go ahead and I just put myself into a polar orbit. Still very elliptical polar orbit, but a polar orbit nonetheless. And I go ahead and I decide, all right, so we're going to land on the South Pole first. And we have 4 landers. And I decide that I'm going to take this one. And I go ahead, and it has SAS and all that, so it's very maneuverable. And I kick myself away from the Mun Express. And this is the first lander, which we are going to land on, I think the North Pole, I think, or the South Pole, one of the poles. So I put it into a very close orbit. South Pole we're going to be landing it at, actually. One on the South Pole, one on the North Pole, just to figure out what's there. So we go ahead and we begin our descent to the South Pole. We have plenty of Delta V on this, far more than what we need for something like this. But I on the mission itself, I initially, when I went to design it, I locked the fuel tanks, and I had to unlock them. And unfortunately, I didn't unlock them in the correct way, and this will become very apparent ever so soon. So we go ahead, we're not, I don't think we're directly over the South Pole, we're not exactly at the South Pole, but we're close enough. And I go ahead, and I think at this point is when I slow it down to about 2 times speed. And you see, I still have 120 Delta V left. And suddenly, it shows that I have fuel, but I run out of Delta V. And then I just fall to the surface, and nothing breaks initially, and then when I start to fall down that slope, things start to break, because turns out I forgot to unlock some of the oxidizer, which meant I was running only on liquid fuel, which meant my engine could not run. So I slowly try and save this. Basically, we're in a very steep impact crater. Like there's no flat surface, particularly flat surface, other than at the bottom where I can land this. So I just start to skip over the terrain pretty much. Not like any Kerbal is ever gonna come here. I don't know, they might, but I wouldn't expect it. So I see down there an area where I think it is somewhat flat, and I try and land it there, luckily. But I decide, I'm just gonna put it down right here, and well, it falls over, and it's nestled in this little. I try putting it up, doesn't really work. It's just kind of nestled in this little the bottom of this crater at exactly 0 meters. Actually, I wonder if that's 0 meters, obviously on the ground, but above sea level, it can't be that much. Anyways, we go ahead and we decide, all right, next lander, and this is gonna go on the North Pole. And the North Pole is much the same. I go back and I finally unlock all the fuel. Do some time warps around. I activate the engine and I obviously go ahead and try and land. And this one is a bit more interesting because well, you'll see. I land in a pretty interesting spot. So the I start to come in, and I very quickly notice that, alright, this is gonna be, I come in at basically the bottom of this crater, which I think this is literally like 0 meters above sea level in terms of the Mun on KSP. But if you notice that there's a little bit of a glitch in the terrain, where the terrain kind of folded over itself, and I'm like, that's interesting, I should land there, or land next to it. So I go ahead, and I begin flying, flying this over, and I try landing it at a spot directly opposite to the little anomaly, I guess. And I go ahead and land, and it's somewhat flat. I go ahead and I do quick save, because my plan is to fly into that, fold into the terrain to figure out what the heck it is. And I begin to fly over a little bit more just to get to a flatter area, like right here. And I go ahead and I do end up quick saving, taking some few pictures as well. I don't know. I think this isn't the thumbnail, but the thumbnail's a different one. But it's pretty interesting. It's like, the folding terrain. Will I just fall through that? I don't actually know. So as you can see, I go ahead and I quick save and I reload just to make sure. And well, I go back and I'm like, all right, let's figure out what happens when I fly into that. Will I just fall through the planet? Will I crash? Will there be a Kraken strike? Who knows? So I eventually slowly maneuver myself over, and I fall through, and I crash, and well, I'm somewhat underneath the terrain, but at the same time not really. And I eventually reload the quick save and my probe is fine, but other than that. Last but not least for this episode is our penultimate probe, which these are all the same design, and this is going to land at a place that we have seen before, which is the Mun Arch, which is hence the thumbnail of this video. So I go ahead and I get into a somewhat equatorial orbit. It doesn't need to be perfect. I actually am in interestingly enough, a retrograde orbit. I didn't actually realize that until much later. However, this actually comes in handy. So I'm trying to figure out where in the hell the Mun Arch is. So my idea is to get into a really low orbit and then just fly around and scout the Mun Arch from there. Like, I know where the Mun Arch is, but for some reason in this time I kind of forgot where it was, because half the planet's in darkness and I didn't know if it was in the part in daytime or the part in darkness. So I eventually start messing around trying to get my orbit into a super low orbit. And eventually I get so close to the surface, going 500 meters a second, that in order to avoid crashing, I need to, let's just say, fire my engine up. And at this point, there's something in my mind which is like, this area looks somewhat familiar. And then I spot it right there. This was so perfect. My screw up turned out to work absolutely perfectly, and it delivered me directly to where I wanted to be. I'm not going to land on the Mun Arch because I've never actually tried that before, but I land close to it. And, well, I land close to it, I take a picture, and, well, that's a thumbnail for the video. So that's part 1 of Mun Express. Part 2 of Mun Express with some of the other probes, that's going to come next week. But anyways, thank you all for watching. My name is Shortline 614, and more Shortline Space Program is coming soon, so I'll see everyone in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.